On the 1st of May this year, Karim Khan, the British Chief Prosecutor of the ICC, was sitting with his wife and a colleague at a hotel in The Hague. This was no ordinary meeting. It came amid a long series of attempts to derail the prosecutor's probe into alleged Israeli war crimes. This was a campaign that involved threats, a Mossad team in Amsterdam, and media leaks about sexual abuse allegations. That evening, over a cup of tea, Khan was told that if the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't dropped, Khan and the court itself would be destroyed. The warning was delivered to Karim Khan by Nicholas Calfman, a British-Israeli defence lawyer at the court. Calfman told Khan he had spoken to Netanyahu's legal advisor and was authorised to make him a proposal. At that moment, Khan was working to issue new arrest warrants for more Israeli officials. But just 2 weeks later, the prosecutor would step down and go on leave. He is still on leave, pending an investigation into sexual misconduct claims against him. We have spoken to sources with knowledge of the affair and reviewed material understood to be relevant to investigation into the allegations currently being conducted by the UN's Office of Internal Oversight Services, the OIOS. We've contacted the people concerned in this story, and their responses are shown at the end of the video. Our investigation has uncovered extraordinary details of an intensifying campaign of threats and intimidation targeting Karim Khan. This is the untold story of that campaign, revealed by Middle East Eye for the first time. Karim Khan became a household name in May 2024 when he announced he was seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and 3 leaders of Hamas. During that announcement, Khan hinted that forces behind the scenes were attempting to pressure him and the International Criminal Court to back down. 4 weeks before this speech, Khan had received a call from then British Foreign Secretary David Cameron. A former Prime Minister, Cameron threatened that the UK would defund and withdraw from the ICC if the court issued warrants for Israeli leaders. Cameron said applying for the arrest warrants would be like dropping a hydrogen bomb. The Foreign Secretary spoke aggressively and repeatedly shouted over Khan. Cameron threatened that if the ICC issued warrants for Israeli leaders, the UK would defund the court and withdraw from the Rome Statute, the ICC's governing charter. Khan said, if this were to occur, then we would have to accept that the rules-based system would be dead. Just days beforehand, Thomas Lynch, a senior legal advisor tasked by Karim Khan with liaising with the Israeli government on the Palestine investigation, privately warned Khan's wife, a longtime friend of his, that proceeding with the arrest warrants would have serious repercussions. Shortly after that, on the 2nd of May, US Republican Senator Lindsey Graham threatened sanctions against Khan if he applied for the warrants. In a CNN interview, Khan quoted Graham directly without mentioning his name.
And of course I've had some elected leaders speak to me and be very blunt. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, was what one senior leader told me.
Khan was determined to press ahead. He made it clear to his team that he was weeks away from announcing the arrest warrants. But that same day, he became aware of 2 major developments within the ICC. Khan received a classified security briefing that indicated the Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, was active in The Hague and posed a potential security threat to the prosecutor and others involved in the case. Later that same day, Thomas Lynch approached Khan and informed him that a female colleague in his team had made accusations of sexual harassment against Khan. Lynch then reported the allegations to ICC investigators, and here's where the timeline of events becomes important. Khan has been widely accused of applying for the arrest warrants to win support in the context of sexual misconduct allegations against him. The Wall Street Journal even claimed that Khan used the arrest warrants to distract from his own behaviour. Furthermore, the prosecutor has been accused of pressuring his female colleague to withdraw her allegations. But the evidence we've seen points to a different story and a very different timeline of events. On the 16th of March, Khan's team decided it was ready to apply for the arrest warrants. This was nearly 1.5 months before the harassment allegations. In late April, just a week before the allegations were first brought to Karim Khan, he and the female colleague were both on a work trip. Around 4 AM, the complainant texted Khan asking if he liked the hotel she had chosen. "Text when you're up, glad to be back on mission with you," she said. Then 4 days after Khan found out about the accusations, the complainant texted him again, saying she'd been contacted by ICC investigators after someone else had reported the allegations to them. "I told them I have no interest in talking," she told him. Khan replied, "You always have my support and confidence." On the 8th of May, she texted him saying she had chosen not to cooperate with the investigation. "I am not playing, and I am not a pawn," she said. Khan responded that some serious games were afoot. "I will leave it at that." The investigation was now closed. This means there was no investigation against Khan when he announced he was seeking the arrest warrants later that month. But in October that year, an anonymous source leaked the allegations to the press, and they began circulating online. The ICC opened another internal investigation, but closed it days later on the 1st of November because again, the woman refused to cooperate. On the 17th of October, she had called Khan, and they had had a long conversation. Khan asked her multiple times if she was recording the call. She said no. We have reviewed her recording of the call. The conversation lasted over an hour, and at one point, Khan asked her if she'd made a formal complaint to the Assembly of State Parties, or ASP, which oversees the ICC. He told her he had heard rumours that she had. The complainant said, "No, but who could that be? Because I'm not even talking to anyone." Khan replied, "This is why I'm saying that it's not just insiders in the office. This office, this court, is compromised in so many ways." At one point in the call, the woman said, "I'm just going to go quietly and take care of myself because I have no faith in the court, none whatsoever." At another point, Khan said, "If you know, there's speculation in the paper that you'll go to the president of the ASP and ask for an investigation is correct, then there'll be an investigation, and that's your choice. And if you don't want to do that, nobody can force you, and again, that's your choice." Khan also told her, "People say a lot of things, but in the end, the dust will settle, and the truth will come out. And my own view is, as I said, any support you want, you have. Take your time, look after yourself, don't make precipitous decisions." Just 2 years earlier, Khan had supported the complainant on a separate allegation she had made towards another senior colleague, one she accused of inappropriate behaviour towards her. She engaged with investigators with Khan's backing. This was during the period in which she later alleged Khan to have repeatedly sexually assaulted her. The investigation was closed in late 2023, and the senior colleague was cleared of wrongdoing. During that phone call last October, Khan asked the lawyer if she felt under pressure. "If you're asking, like, by a particular person," she replied, "no, but I am feeling pressurized by the situation." Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would soon have to start planning his travels carefully. In late November, the ICC issued the arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant. With an ICC warrant hanging over the Prime Minister's head, there were now 125 countries he couldn't set foot in without risking arrest. And in the months that followed, Khan reportedly began to work on applications for new arrest warrants for 2 more Israeli ministers, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, for their role in expanding illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. By this time, the Trump administration had followed through with its threats against the ICC. In February, the US took the extraordinary step of sanctioning the ICC prosecutor. Karim Khan's US visa was cancelled and his bank accounts were frozen. The pressure around him was now growing. But Khan and his deputies continued with their preparations for the new arrest warrants, and this brings us back to that conversation in May in the hotel in The Hague. Khan and his wife, the former ICC lawyer Shamila Allegendra, arrived at the Desand Hotel just after 6:30 p.m. There they met with Nicholas Calfman, the British-Israeli ICC defence lawyer. Shortly into the conversation, Calfman said he was in contact with Roy Schondorf, a legal advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu. He said he was authorised to make Khan a proposal that would allow him to climb down the tree. He told Khan to apply to the court to reclassify the warrants and underlying information as confidential. This, it was suggested, would allow Israel to access the details of the allegations, which it couldn't do at the time, and challenge them in private without the outcome being made public. But Calfman warned that if it emerged Khan was applying for more arrest warrants, then all options would be off the table. And if the original warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant weren't withdrawn, Calfman said, they will destroy you and they will destroy the court. Khan and his wife, who also attended the meeting, both understood this to be a threat. Less than 2 weeks later, the Wall Street Journal published details of serious sexual assault allegations against Khan. There's no suggestion of any link between the meeting and the report. Previously, the reported allegations had been of sexual harassment. Now it was reported that the woman accused Khan of having sexually assaulted her on several occasions over the course of about a year. This included during the period in which she had been engaging with external investigators on allegations against another ICC official with Khan's support. Khan strenuously denied all the allegations against him, but in mid-May he stepped down on indefinite leave. Here was where Khan's advisor Thomas Lynch played a significant role. In May last year, in a private conversation with Khan's wife, Lynch suggested he was deeply skeptical about the harassment allegations against Khan. Despite this, however, Lynch later urged the ICC presidency to start a process by which ICC member states could vote to suspend Khan. He did this in May, after the Wall Street Journal report was released. The attempt failed, but Khan went on leave shortly afterwards and will remain on leave until the external UN investigation is complete. So where does this leave the arrest warrants? They're in the hands of 2 deputy prosecutors. It's unclear how the deputies will proceed, but the ICC has ordered that any further arrest warrants cannot be publicised. So, if judges do issue warrants against Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, the public won't be informed. According to the Wall Street Journal, some officials and legal experts doubt the court would move ahead without a chief prosecutor on the job, given the political risks such a prosecution could bring. In June, the US imposed further sanctions, targeting 4 of the ICC judges presiding over the court. Speaking on a podcast in June, Nicholas Calfman said the sanctions were designed to encourage the dropping of the arrest warrants for Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Defence Minister Gallant.
There appears to be a general sense of fear prevailing over all those people working both in the office of the prosecutor and in judicial chambers on account of the possibility that the White House administration might sanction the court as an entity. Now, should that transpire, then it truly could paralyse the court's activities.
The ICC finds itself in an unprecedented situation. In a further threat to the court earlier this month, the US State Department's legal advisor, Reed Rubenstein, warned that all options remain on the table unless all arrest warrants and the investigation into alleged Israeli war crimes are dropped. Meanwhile, Khan is still on leave. We spoke to an anonymous source in the ICC who knows the prosecutor. They told us that this has been an attempt not just to destroy Karim Khan, but the International Criminal Court by countries that claim to support the international rule of law. The source added that if the campaign succeeds, it will be the destruction of the ICC, and it will be the end of the rules-based order.